Welcome to the Missouri Liberty Alliance. I hope you're having a great day. Today is Friday. It'll be the 18th of June, 2021. Hey, gang, we have, a little bit of an update here. This actually came out yesterday, but it wasn't covered. And this is the letter from the Attorney General of Missouri, Eric Schmidt, to the Department of Justice, the United States Department of Justice. So this is kind of exciting. Remember yesterday I was talking about the shot across the bow for Missouri with a letter written from the Department of Justice saying you can't, void federal gun laws, which we didn't do. The federal gun laws are still there. They're always going to be there. Whether or not we will actually help the federal government enforce those laws is another matter completely. So without me reading this whole document, it's actually a long letter, but it's brilliant. And for those of you who have liberty in your minds and in your hearts and in your souls, please do read this letter. It's basically it's one thorough spanking of the federal government, reminding them of the history of the United States, and further than that, actually what was happening with basically royalty and the kings taking away of people's rights and what it led to. So there's several things here that actually need attention, but I'm only going to focus on two real quick. And the best one, of course, is for last. Let me read just a few passages here from this letter. Once again, this is from the Attorney General of Missouri, Eric Schmidt. He says, and once again, this is to the Department of Justice, Missouri is not attempting to nullify federal law. Instead, Missouri is defending its people from federal government overreach by prohibiting state and local law enforcement agencies from being used by the federal government to infringe on Missourians' right to keep and bear arms. We must remind you, he's saying this to the Department of Justice, that our liberty is safeguarded both by the right to keep and bear arms and the power reserved to the state of Missouri under the 10th Amendment. Anti-commandeering, we'll get to that in a second. And basic principles of federalism. The rights protected by the Second Amendment and the 10th Amendment are woven into the fabric of our country. Now, we have to actually remind the federal government how they're supposed to operate under the confines of the Constitution. What we did in Missouri was very special. No one else has what we have. That is by all means, that is not something we should be real proud of. We need other states to do what Missouri did as well. We are leading the way on Second Amendment rights in the state, and in the entire country. So I strongly suggest, and once again, a side note here for a quick second, please, if you are in another state and you're watching these videos, I encourage you to start your own Liberty Alliance. Please get that started. Get a grassroots action started and get your Second Amendment rights back by using the 10th Amendment and Anti-Commandeering Doctrine. Before I go any further, let's actually hear what Michael Bolden at the 10th Amendment Center has to say about Anti-Commandeering Doctrine.
To stop federal acts, James Madison recommended a refusal to cooperate with officers of the Union. Over 170 years of Supreme Court precedent supports this strategy too. Known as the Anti-Commandeering Doctrine, in 4 major cases dating back to 1842, the Supreme Court has held that the federal government cannot require states to use personnel or resources to help the federal government carry out its acts or regulatory programs. In the 1842 Prigg case, Justice Joseph Story wrote that the federal government could not force states to implement or carry out the Fugitive Slave Act of 1793. He said that it was a federal law, and the federal government ultimately had to enforce it. In the 1992 New York case, Sandra Day O'Connor wrote that the feds cannot commandeer the legislative processes of the states by directly compelling them to enact and enforce a federal regulatory program. In the 1997 Prince case, the court held that the federal government may neither issue directives requiring the states to address particular problems, nor command the state's officers or those of their political subdivisions to administer or enforce a federal regulatory program. And in the 2012 Sebelius case, the court held that the Constitution has never been understood to confer upon Congress the ability to require the states to govern according to Congress's instructions. This mirrors what James Madison advised in Federalist No. 46, a refusal to cooperate with officers of the Union as an effective strategy to stop the federal government. In a time when federal power is far more overextended than it was back then, this is no mere footnote from the father of the Constitution. This approach is not just legal under modern Supreme Court precedent. It's not just constitutional according to the founders. It's good strategy. Plain and simple.
Okay, that's actually, I couldn't have said it better. Michael Bolden, I want to say shout out to Michael Bolden and the 10th Amendment Center. What a tremendous resource they are to me and what I'm trying to accomplish in the state of Missouri by starting this grassroots movement on the heels of SEPA. Well, actually, technically, it was kind of starting even before then, to help SEPA in its passage. But other states, please pay attention to what we're doing here and please try to emulate it. You guys need these rights just as much as Missourians need these rights. These rights are not relegated to just the state of Missouri. But we are using the 10th Amendment to take our Second Amendment rights back. Okay, let's get to the final paragraph of this letter. And this is this is the 1-2 punch here. And we'll get to why it's important in a second. Okay, so Eric Schmidt writes, "We will fight tooth and nail to defend our right to keep and bear arms protected by the Second Amendment, Article 1 and 23 of the Missouri Constitution, and the Second Amendment Preservation Act." Now, this is great, guys. Listen to this. "And we will not tolerate any attempt by the federal government to deprive Missourians of this critical civil right." Remember the veiled threat we got yesterday, basically from the federal government, about, technical assistance and grants? Well, we're going to take those away. And the veiled threat, they said, we're going to come into your state and we're going to enforce federal gun law ourselves then. Well, this is the shot across the bow, from the federal government to Missouri. Now, Missouri has actually fired a follow-up volley on the Second Amendment, critical Second Amendment issue here for the state of Missouri. "And we will not tolerate any attempt by the federal government to deprive Missourians of this critical civil right." So where do they get the information to actually write that? And by the way, making it the last sentence of the letter is extremely important here. So hats off to the governor, Mike Parson, and also to our Attorney General, Eric Schmidt. This was very well-written letter, and once again, guys, I encourage you to read this entire thing and actually print it out. Why are they saying this? Well, to understand that a little bit better, we go back to the Missouri Second Amendment Preservation Act. And if we scroll down, by the way, everything will be linked down below. We scroll down to page 5. I believe it's on page 5. Here we go. In its section 1.440, "It shall be the duty of the courts and law enforcement agencies of this state to protect the rights of law-abiding citizens to keep and bear arms within the borders of the state and to protect these rights from infringements defined under section 1.420. Gang, you get it? We have our own veiled threat right back to the federal government. And by the way, I'm not suggesting that this is going to happen, but I will suggest to you what this means. Let's take a closer look at these important words, both from the letter from Eric Schmidt and from HB 85, the Second Amendment Preservation Act. Once again, focusing on the last sentence, and I've taken away the camera here so we could focus on this, the last sentence of the letter, and it is, "And we will not tolerate any attempt by the federal government to deprive Missourians of this critical civil right." So we take a look at the Missouri Second Amendment Preservation Act, once again, page 5, section 1.440. "It shall be the duty of the courts and law enforcement agencies of the state to protect the rights of law-abiding citizens to keep and bear arms within the borders of this state and to protect these rights from infringements defined under section 1.420. Guys, I'm not saying that they're going to do this, but it certainly would be within the law now that if someone from the ATF comes onto Missouri soil to deprive someone of their Second Amendment rights, that person or persons may actually be arrested and incarcerated for their actions. If federal agents come on Missouri soil, it is the duty of law enforcement and the courts to protect Missouri citizens from infringements on their Second Amendment rights. Now, if they participate, then we have the other measure, which is actually the real teeth in this document that has become law in the state of Missouri, which is basically to sue the agency involved per incident, per person. So, I mean, it goes up in numbers. I mean, not less than $50,000. What we've done here in Missouri is astoundingly important. Other states need to follow our lead. So, one more thing here. You guys, I don't know if you've seen this yet. This is the only reason I'm doing this, is because you can actually see now on HB 85, and once again, link down below, that it was delivered to the governor, approved by the governor, and delivered to the Secretary of State. So, I mean, it is final, it is done, all that fun stuff. We saw the governor sign it, but it's also now been delivered to Eric Schmidt's office. On Facebook, I'm doing battle with a few people, and by the way, doing battle is not relative. They say it's a redundancy. Second Amendment Preservation Act, all it did is reaffirm our Second Amendment rights. That's not true, and I actually said so. It is not redundant, I say. What's truly changed is that Missouri law enforcement can no longer enforce unconstitutional federal gun laws, and in fact can be sued if they do. This, by definition, is not a redundancy. So, there are a lot of people out there that seem to think that this is a redundancy because we already have the Second Amendment in the Constitution, but infringements are constant from the federal government. Now, Missouri inherited a lot of federal gun laws, and we'll deal with that later, but the infringements keep continuing, and the threat of further infringements is astoundingly historic right now at this point in time, and it's coming from all three branches of government. So this is why we did what we had to do in Missouri, and we encourage all states to do something similar and get it done. Now that Missouri's got it done, that should help you in your process. So once again, I'd like to invite any of you in any other states of the Union that happen to watch this video to start your own Liberty Alliance movement and get the grassroots going in your state to stop infringements on the Second Amendment in your state, using anti-commandeering doctrine, as Michael Bolden so elegantly stated, works in the video that I just showed. And by the way, I do have permission to use Michael Bolden's work in the videos. He will always be credited, the 10th Amendment Center. And I want you guys to consider that an incredible resource. If you actually look, I will have at the bottom of every video how to get to the 10th Amendment Center. So, and it's just a shout out to Michael Bolden. Thank you so much for the work that you do, which helps people like me do grassroots in individual states. Michael's providing a valuable resource for all states simultaneously. I'm more focused on Missouri. So, and of course, shout out to everyone in Missouri, the grassroots, who made the Second Amendment Preservation Act possible. You guys are just awesome. Thank you very much. And thank you again for joining me on this journey to make Missouri the best state of the United States for liberty and freedom for all. Thank you for joining today, guys. God bless each and every one of you. Have a great day.